One. Welcome back to Wide Right. I'm Manny Navarro of The Athletic, joined today by a special guest, my former longtime colleague at the Miami Herald, Susan Miller Degnan. Susan and I attended Miami's 41-17 victory in front of 90,000 at the Swamp just a couple of days ago. Impressive win to start the season for Mario Cristobal and the Hurricanes. We're going to talk about Cam Ward's big day. We're going to talk to Susan about where this Miami team might be headed this season as it progresses, comparing them to some of the real good Canes teams she covered in the early 2000s. But I want to start with the end of the day, Susan. On Saturday, when players and coaches were walking off the field in celebration, Mario Cristobal mocking the Gators in a long post-game celebration with his players. He motioned like he was cracking the skull of a gator over his knee, which was kind of wild. He got a big scowl on his face. To me, though, the best part really was watching Miami's players get warded off the field by Florida's recruiting personnel who didn't want them talking to their recruits who were there as guests. Might have been the best defense the Gators played all day, if we're being honest, Susan. What was your biggest takeaway from the end of that game? Was it Mario looking stunned when he saw you in the press conference? I think you surprised them more than Billy Napier did.
Yeah, that was one of the highlights for me. But yeah, the end of the game was amazing. First of all, seeing the UM fans, there were a lot of UM fans there. You could hear them. I mean, Mario kept talking about 4,000 people there, but I think there were a lot more than 4,000, or it seemed like it. Yeah, it was really nice to see the fans happy again, see Mario celebrating with the fans and his wife, Jessica. And yeah,
Big hug
I
between him and Jessica. It looked like it was going to be a fun night after the game.
very intimate hug. But anyway, anyway, yeah, just impressed with all that. I actually didn't see Mario doing the other than on Twitter. You know,
Yes,
on social media, I saw him whatever he was doing with his knee, like cracking I
a
don't know.
gator. Yeah, a gator head over his knee or
Yeah,
something.
that
Yeah.
was a little scary. That was scary. I was glad I wasn't around when Mario did that. But yeah, they were chanting the Mario, Mario, Mario. It was like old days. And then the recruiting stuff, I again didn't. I mean, I saw all the recruits were lined up in that area. Apparently, they're always there. From at least what I saw
Yeah.
on Twitter, it's the same place they always are. But oh man, that was inopportune for UF at that moment because the UM players were, throwing up the U and saying in the one video I saw, "Don't go there, don't go here, or don't go
Yes.
here,
Don't go to
come to the
Miami.
U,
Come to
the
the U
U."
if you want to win, basically, is what they
There
were
was
saying.
there was one of the recruits. I think he was one of the top recruits doing the Gator chomp.
Yeah.
If you notice that, but there was somebody threw up the U, and really, the UM players were not obnoxious at all. They were just walking. They didn't. They were kind of walking past them, and a couple of them went up to him. But not a good look for Florida. But the whole game was. And one more thing, another end of game takeaway. Mario did not take a knee.
That's true. He did not.
Mario didn't take a knee, and we all realized that when Reese Poffenbarger, the backup, came in for the last two plays, running plays. A lot of people thought of it. I didn't think of it then because I think we had run down to the field,
Right.
to try to get to the press box and stuff. And it was just kind of fun. It's not like he was going to lose a game because they ran, of course, but some coaches would have just taken a knee, right?
Yeah,
Am I
I
wrong?
think I think it was kind of scary that Cam Ward was in the game with, up 24 points there, and you're like, man, I wonder if one of the Gators is going to take a cheap shot at him or where he gets hurt. So I was thinking the same thing, like take get your best player out of the game. But Mario, look, Cam Ward didn't want to come out. He talked about that after the game, right? He wanted to be there to take a knee, and Mario was not going to do it no matter what. I think, it was kind of one of those things where he wanted to just keep rolling up yardage and sort of sticking it to the Gators. They outgained them by 268 yards. And really, DJ Lagway comes in and he led one touchdown drive, but it really wasn't close, Susan. It was like a total domination for Miami.
Yeah, it really was never I never felt like it was going to be close. And yeah, I don't blame Mario for wanting to get a few extra yards in there. I mean, this
It
was
is
a
the
really
Gators,
emotional.
right? It is the Gators.
It's the Gators, and this was a really emotional game. You know,
It was.
for
You could see it.
everybody, for everybody, the fans, and and what fans, by the way, Manny. I have to say, I, they have great fans. I mean, as
Yeah,
far as
they
the
stayed.
people,
A lot of them stayed through the
yes,
beginning of the fourth quarter when the game was basically
yes,
over, and they
and a lot of them, yeah,
yeah, they took part in the Tom Petty song, I Won't Back Down, even though they were getting mocked
I
by
love
Miami
that one.
fans and all that. So, but listen, Florida's got a whole set of problems with Billy Napier. We'll get to that because you and I had an interesting
Right.
conversation about the Gators on the drive home. But I want to cover a lot of ground with you. You covered the Hurricanes, of course, for close to 3 decades, starting in 1995. You decided to retire at the end of last season. The Herald, kind of did the Brett Favre thing with you. They brought you back for the opener so that you could be there with Jordan McPherson, who's now the beat writer for the Herald. And I'm happy because now that you're retired, I can have you on my show more regularly. But the fact that I was ex-Herald and working for the Athletic, I know Alex Mena and some of the people at the Herald are like, no, we don't want any association with the Athletic and Manny and this and that. But now that you're retired, it's cool to bring you on. So I'm happy about that.
It is, and the Herald, Mama Herald, who I still love, is I'll be when I'm going to be traveling a lot in the next couple months, like one trip after another, all over the country, and will unfortunately I'll be watching. I mean, I fortunately I'll be watching the game, but unfortunately I won't be able to go to a lot of games. But the Herald, whenever I want to go to a game,
yeah.
I'll be there to write, and I am going to the Cal game,
You will
so
be
I'll
there for
be in
Cal,
Boca.
right? Which I won't.
I'll be
I will
there.
not be in California, but you'll be there. So I want fans to make sure they're following you and reading your stuff. Look, you wrote a ton of great stories. I want to ask you about some of your favorite memories on the beat, how covering Miami has changed over the years. There's a lot of topics we can dive into. But I want to start with Saturday's game because I know that's what the fans want to talk about. This to me, Susan, looked like the best Miami team that's been put together since they came over to the ACC 20 years ago. It obviously hasn't been a very good run. Miami still hasn't won an ACC title. They've only played once in the ACC championship. I'm not saying this is a national championship type team, but I did pick Miami to win the ACC this year for a lot of reasons. I think offensive and defensive line, obviously Cam Ward. They've got a lot of returning experienced guys at receiver, some really good players in the defensive front, including Kiko Mauinoa, who had the first sack of the game for Miami on Saturday. In your opinion, I want to know. I know it's just one game, but does this look like this could be the best Miami team since they joined the ACC? And if so, why or why
Yes,
not?
I think so. I think the number one why is Cam Ward. Um, it's all about the U, but it's all about the quarterback at the U, and
Yes.
uh, that was the most yardage, right, in an opening in a start by a Miami quarterback since
Three,
Ken
three,
Dorsey.
385 yards and three
Yeah,
touchdowns and really just one
385.
interception. Yeah.
And I think, and I think it was like 74%
Completion percentage.
accuracy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, completion percentage. He's so good. I mean, I did cover spring, as you know, and
Hmm.
spring practice, and Mario doesn't let us see much at all, and it was worse in the fall, from what I hear. But we saw a little bit in the spring, and we could tell then he was good, and from what everybody was saying, he's fantastic, and his stats and his past, but man, was he good. So it starts there. The guy, so calm. We talked about that. So calm and
Yeah.
poised, and it's so much slower for him, right? It looks like it's in slow motion for
It looks like
him.
he's bored at times, Susan, to me. It looks like he's just kind of like, I'm going to go here with the ball and I'm going to go here and I'm going to take off and run. And so what if this guy tries to hit me? I'm just going to step out of bounds. It looked easy. Like he's playing at a different speed than everyone else.
Yeah, his awareness of everything around him and his own body and his movement, and how he just kind of, how he goes in one direction, rolls left, and is surveying the field. And we will talk about the O line was fantastic, as we expected, and they gave him all the time in the world to survey the field. But the thing is, when he cams, like, you could see his eyes like looking all over the place, really calmly, really calmly. His eyes are a little deceptive. You think he might go this place. He throws to another place, just dimes. We talking about that
Yeah.
bullets, like line drives, bullseyes. Just so many pretty plays. And I think the rest of the team improves because of the quarterback. I think the receivers now have a guy that's, I mean, and because of the offensive line, both sides
Yeah, I mean
of the.
they seem complete really on offense now. Like Tyler Van Dyke had moments where he looked really good with Rhett Lashley a couple years ago, but I think what happens is in this game, Susan, is coaches adjust, right? And I think the book was sort of out on Tyler starting with last year's Georgia Tech game. It looked like defenses really figured him out. Cam Ward is a different
Yeah.
quarterback. Why? Because he buys so much time. Like it's really easy for him, I think, to escape the pressure. And you and I were listening to ACC Network on our drive home, or our drive back to Claremont, where we were staying in Airbnb for the game. We were listening to Mark Richt, right? And Mark Richt coached some really
Yeah.
great quarterbacks, between Georgia, Miami, and Florida State in his time as a coach. And Coach Richt was talking about how he reminds him of Charlie Ward. And you remember Charlie
Yeah, of
Ward. I mean, Charlie
course.
Ward was amazing. And but he talked about just how Cam's confidence and how easy he sits back there like nobody's going to touch me. Nobody's going to get to me. And I think when you have that kind of leadership at that position, Susan, where a guy is so confident in what he's doing, you're absolutely right, exactly to what you said. Everybody else feeds off of it. And I think that's what gives this Hurricane team a chance to really be special and different from the last 20 years that we've been watching them in the ACC.
Oh, without a doubt. Every position group, just talking about offense, the tight ends, right?
Hmm.
Arroyo had how many catches? Four or something. He had a lot of catches.
The tight ends
Oh,
nearly equaled last.
he,
Yeah, they nearly equaled last year's total with how amazing they did.
in one game,
Yes.
and Cam McCormick catching that first touchdown. How great was that, right?
Yeah.
Cam to Cam,
Yeah.
number 9 yard touchdown, and he was so happy. And on ESPN Game Day, they had that little clip or whatever, the little special thing on Cam McCormick being the only ninth year
Yes.
player in college football, and how his mom was so happy when he came back for one play before getting a season-ending injury, like one of his 100 season-ending injuries. Can you imagine how? And that was remember, it was like the first completion of some game, some season when
Yes.
he
Yeah.
was
So just
before.
terrible injuries to go through.
How
Yes.
about now? He catches the first touchdown of the season.
The first one from by any Miami receiver from
Can,
Cam Ward. Yeah.
yeah,
Susan,
fantastic.
being around Florida State some last year when I got a chance to go up, and I was at the LSU FSU game last year, and I saw Keon Coleman and all those great players with Jordan Travis. I
Mhm.
got the sense on Saturday watching this Miami team, it almost feels like that team did. And that was a really special team that got held out of the 12-team playoff, unfortunately, at the end because Travis got hurt. But it feels like this Miami team. I mean, I know it's the first year of the 12-team playoff, and I know again it's only 1 week, but I'm pretty confident like this team is certainly good enough to get in the playoffs and do something. You were the last one to cover a team at Miami that actually was in contention for a national championship. Let's speed up the conversation here. Do you think at all that this Miami team could win a national championship? Like, are they good enough talent-wise? Do you think they could contend? Because it's a 12-team playoff, a lot of games to win, etc. But like just off of what you saw Saturday, do you think there's
Yes.
a lot of the ingredients that are the same?
Yes, absolutely. Winning a national championship, you've got to go through all those games, and now I do think they're good enough for sure to get in the playoffs.
Hmm.
But I've also learned from covering all these years that things happen during the season. Players get players get
Injuries, yeah.
injured. A lot of players get injured. Okay, and if they're on the offensive line, okay, that's a little bit of a problem. Okay, if they're on the defensive line, it can be a big problem. Um, if they're to the quarterback, okay, no, I did not jinx the quarterback, anybody, but then it's a really big problem. So, yes, from what we saw on Saturday, okay, yes, and knowing there will be injuries, but they're definitely good enough to make the playoffs, I think, right?
Hmm.
12
Yeah.
teams. I
12
think,
teams.
and also, Manny, from what we saw of the other teams, that was only one game,
Right.
but Miami, they played the Gators. It's not like they're playing.
Southeastern Louisiana
You say
State
it.
or
I'm not
yeah.
going to say it.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're not playing like some really bad schools. This
Or an
is an SEC
FCS
program.
team, an
Right.
FCS. Like
Yeah.
next week they play who? FAMU, I think.
Florida A&M, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it wasn't Florida A&M, and I mean, all respect to Florida A&M, but so yeah, the Gators look really bad. I mean, relatively for an SC team and for their history and stuff, but it's still an SEC team. It's
Right.
still a program, a major player in college football. So to me, that showed a lot. So yes, I definitely think yes, I think they're good enough. And then it depends on all the variables.
Yes, for sure. One thing I thought about afterwards, Susan, a couple years ago, I think you and I were up in Tallahassee for this game together. But remember when Miami played Florida State and
Mhm.
Willie Taggart was fired like not
Oh,
long after that?
yeah, like the next
Um,
day.
yeah, yeah, like it
Yeah.
literally it happened very, very quickly. He only got to coach 21 games there. Florida State was able to hire a really good coach in Mike Norvell, who I think is really, really good.
Mhm.
And they got their act together, had a great season last year, and finally won the ACC again for the first time in a long time. I felt leaving the stadium that this might be something similar where maybe Billy Napier doesn't get fired tomorrow, right? Or in the next couple days. But I
Right.
think that was the kind of loss. Like we talked about this going into the game, right? Like how much pressure would be on the head coaches of the team that loses the game. I
Yeah.
think the fact that Miami dominated Florida so easily could potentially lead to Billy Napier losing his job. And one thing I thought about, and you and I talked about this some in the car, and I'm bringing it up now because I felt like it was a good discussion. Um, we've all been sitting here wondering which program among the big three in the state, right? If you're a Gators fan, you're a Hurricanes fan, you're a Seminoles fan, which one of the three programs is going to get back to winning championships? Well, the last 20 years, Miami hasn't been a contender. Florida State won one in 2014, and right before that, Urban Meyer obviously won a couple championships with the Gators. But it's been about a decade now since any of the teams in the state have been able to compete with Georgia or Ohio State or Alabama or any of the great programs nationally. Um, Florida, though, I felt walking away from this game like this could be a bearing moment for Florida. Like I told you in the car, like I wonder if Florida never recovers because they've gone through so many head coaches. And I just want to ask you because we talked about this on our drive home. You told me don't ever say Florida can never win a national championship because that's not right. But I do feel like it was a big like this game on Saturday for Mario. It's almost like the start of chapter two, maybe the good times for Miami. For Florida, I feel like this could be an era now that they might be down for a while.
And it could be. I mean, I just went again from experience
Yes.
because I remember when Miami, they won the title, right? And actually, what am I talking about? It was before they won the title, right? They had this, so it was 95 when they
Hmm.
got the 31 the sanctions, this scholarship reduction, 31 scholarships over 3 years, and that was started in 95 or whatever. um, and all the people at ESPN and all the big talking heads said that's it, Miami will never win a national title. This was 95. This was when Butch had
Right.
just
And
gotten
he
there.
was
They
dealing
never.
with all the
Oh my,
sanctions.
terrible sanctions. That's a lot of scholarships to lose over 3 years. Okay, so I understand. We had this great discussion yesterday. I understand it's a new, totally different era in every way, NIL and all that stuff. Different, the conferences, the playoffs, it's all different, but still 95, 2000, the Canes, in my opinion, should have been in the national title game,
Right.
right? And
In
Florida,
2000.
after the 2000 season, Florida State got in and like laid an egg against Oklahoma. For what I remember, it was pretty pathetic. Should have
13 to
been
2 was not a good game.
anyway in that game. But by 2000, 5 years later or whatever, was great again to me. And then
Right.
2001, they win the title. 2002, they should have won the title. And so that's, yeah, never say never, because all of it comes down, as you said, a lot of it comes down to money,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Money and the powers that be at the schools. But things change, and all I'm saying is I agree with you. Florida's definitely down. There's no doubt Florida's down. It might be the beginning of a however long slide for Florida, but it doesn't mean that they won't be back. And
Yeah,
so
I wrote a column for The Athletic on the situation with Napier, and they got to look, if they were to fire him right now, it'd be $26 million. They would have to buy him out the rest of his contract, which would obviously put a challenge on their budget for everything, players, coaches, having to replace other staff members, etc., and then hire a new coach. I know a lot of Florida fans are thinking, oh, well, they'll just take Lane Kiffin or they'll get Jed Fish, who's a Florida grad, right, who's at Washington and just got to Washington this past year. But there's a bigger deal with the Gators. Their school president was involved in a huge scandal, with money and all kinds of types of issues. They've got to hire a new school president, I think, before they can really hire a new athletic director, who will then hire the next football coach. So there's a lot for the Gators to go through, Susan, in my mind. And I just think being in the SEC, like that is much tougher than what Miami and Florida State face every single week. And people have talked about the Gators schedule and how they play 8 ranked teams. And, this season, they could go 3-9, two and whatever. It could be a really, really bad year in Florida. And I think it would devastate their program, and set them back several years. Look, having covered Miami for the last 20 years with you, right? And seeing what a struggle it's been just for Miami to become relevant again. I
yeah,
think for us to sit here and say Florida may not go through something similar, we'd be lying, because I think they
yeah,
could be headed towards something very similar.
agree. And how about I don't even know. I you might know this
Hmm.
right now as far as Graham Mertz goes, because he was
Concussion. He suffered a concussion in the
well,
game,
that's
and
right. He was
yeah,
a good, yeah. So God knows. I mean, who knows what happens now? But I agree with you. Big picture, it does not look good for the Gators, and they might not be singing the Tom Petty song for too long. I don't know, but by the way, that was my favorite part, other than like like seeing Cam Ward was like so
yes,
awesome. But the actual like atmosphere and stuff, when they
yes.
started singing "We Won't Back Down," uh, oh my God,
Yeah, that was really neat. And
I
I
love
I hadn't been to Florida Field in a long time. Really, I
it.
think since Randy Shannon lost their 26-3 back in 2008 with Tim Tebow and and that great Gators team that ended up winning the championship. But yeah, it was neat. It was neat to be there. Let's keep going down memory lane, Susan. The
Okay,
last few teams you covered in Miami were not very good. And I really don't want to harp on the negative too long, because I'm
yeah,
considered a hater as it is. Everybody thinks I'm a Florida State fan. I can already hear Miami fans complaining in my mentions for even bringing this up. But it's such an impressive win this past weekend, and now it looks like they might be turning a corner with Cristobal. Good times are ahead. What would you, somebody who's covered the team as long as you did, you covered them when they won championships, and then you saw the fall. Because of this unique perspective and the fact that I got you on the show this week, I want you to talk about this. What would you say is the biggest reason Miami struggled as much as it did for so long? Do you think it was simply coaching? Was it the fact the players weren't as good? Was it money? What do you like when you think back to what the last 20 years of Miami football was like and why they struggled? You would have a better perspective maybe than anybody.
I
Why do you think it was such a struggle for Miami?
maybe it was a combination of everything.
Hmm.
I mean, it's hard to pinpoint, because when they like in 2003, 2004, they were still getting in the Orange Bowl.
Right.
Um, I mean, uh, first of all, players are important.
Yes.
Okay, really important. Their quarterbacks. Um, I've got to think. Take me through the quarterback. I mean, there were like Kyle Wright was one of
Yeah,
them. It was,
I think your answer was headed towards the right place. I think it was a combination of everything. but I guess like if you were to sum it up and just be like, man, that's the thing that I always sort of come back to when I think about it. This is
I
for
don't
me,
know.
Susan. I'll give you my
Okay.
answer. I'll
Okay.
give you my answer. For me, I felt like the administration took football for granted. I think they got into the ACC conference and they made more money, and at the time, they just always assumed we're the U. It doesn't matter who we hire as a coach. Doesn't matter if he doesn't have a big budget
It's a really good
to
point.
hire coaches, but we're gonna just assume that the players are all gonna want to come here and we're just gonna win because we're the U. And I think what's
Good.
changed in the last couple years is the administration, right? The people in charge basically decided we've got to invest money in football. And this is even before NIL, Susan. I'm talking about like after COVID, right? And you know, all the money that U Health got, et cetera. Like it felt like the administrators decided, you know, the Joe Echeverias of the world, the Rudy Fernandezes of the world, we need to go out and get a big time football coaches and throw money at this.
Yeah.
Whereas for so long, I mean, Susan, you remember Randy Shannon used to tell us, right? He didn't have a big budget to hire guys, right? Like, oh, what do you like kind of what do you guys expect from us? Like this is what I have to work with. We don't have facilities. We don't have an on-campus stadium. For you, I mean, you lived it. I'm just asking you, what like when you think
I
about it,
I think that's a really good point. Everything you said is a good point. And they didn't really, and they still, I mean, their facilities will never equal up to, they're good, they're fine now, but
right?
UM always talked about the old time guys, the old time, the guys from 80, 83, 87, 89, 91, those championships. They're like, it doesn't matter facilities. It, I agree with you. The money, but all that does, because now not just facilities, but you made a really good point, um, about throwing the money behind it and people in the administration being behind it. That's absolutely true. Um, Social media, I know I always bring it up, but for me, I've lived through both. Okay, I've
Mm-hmm.
lived through pre kind
Pre
of computers.
pre Twitter,
I
pre Instagram, all that.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, pre-online stuff, and now what a different, yeah, money. I guess it always was money, but when you couldn't see how the other half lived, and how you couldn't really see it, and you didn't have kids going on there and seeing
Hmm.
all this stuff, it was different. So I think the modern age kind of took its toll on Miami, and you're right about the people backing up, the people in the administration
Yeah.
backing up the program, and just assuming. I agree with you that
Yeah.
was going to be great. Uh,
And I would say obviously the Nevin Shapiro stuff, I think changed
oh, that was
changed things a lot. That was pretty notable because I
Nevin.
think people really got scared at that point. You know, Miami had been in trouble so many times, and when that happened, I felt like they were like, we got to kick everybody away from us. We can't let this happen again. And I think that was a negative step for the
That
program.
is really true. The players were
Hmm.
not as involved. We're
Yeah.
always talking to the old time players, and they have these meetings. Remember, we went to that, whatever it was, where they brought in all the old time guys.
Yes.
Um, and before they hired Mario,
Hmm.
you know what I'm talking about? And they were, or I just think, uh, yeah, it's they took things for granted.
Hmm.
Took things for granted. I agree, and Nevin Shapiro definitely had an effect, um, on things, and players started going other places, and the coaching. Come on, some of
Well,
the coaching
some
was,
of those hires, I mean, I don't know who, I don't want to, again, I don't want to make this too negative, but you think about some of the hires, Mark D'Onofrio, Patrick Nix as offensive coordinator, some of those guys that just never really, I think, understood what they were working with, the type of players they were working with, and you know, it was
very
just
strange,
yes.
defenses and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, it was a lot. All right, let's spin
I,
it positive here. You wrote so many great feature stories on players. Like you, to me, you're the best storyteller we've ever had cover this team.
thank you.
And and you know, really get people to know who these players are, who their families are, where they come from, how they are as people. And I miss the days when you had access to do those things. Obviously, it's changed probably because of Nevin Shapiro more than anything else. But I want to ask you, who are I'm not going to ask you who your favorite all-time Hurricane is because that wouldn't be fair, and I wouldn't want you to have to hurt anybody's feelings who think they're number one on Susan's list because there's a lot of guys who love you. But who give me like the five, I don't know, top three, top five memorable Canes for you in retirement. When you think of your time on the beat and the people you covered, who are some of the stories or guys that you just always kind of smile when you think about them as people and players and Hurricanes? Are there any guys that come right to mind for you?
Dan Morgan, I always talk about him.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Dan Morgan, I love, well, Santana, but Sonoris Moss,
Hmm.
his little brother.
Yes.
I still talk to him. He still talks to me all the time. Um, all of them. Willis McGahee, all those old time guys. Ed Reed,
Hmm.
okay, Ed Reed.
What was it
I
like? What was it
Yeah,
like to cover those guys in '01 and '02? What was it like? Give people, there's so many young writers who cover this team now, people that didn't go through the traditional way of covering a team like I did, where they grew up in a newspaper. They have their own blogs, they're internet guys, recruiting guys. Uh, we talk about limited access all the time that we can't talk to the players and get to know them. But what was life like when you were first covering this team? So you can give
it was
listeners an
great.
idea of what going to practice was like and the access you had and how cool it was.
Well, we were allowed to go to practice and actually watch the practices. Pretty much the whole practices, right? We
Hmm.
we we could see the practices. Um, we could stand wherever on the sideline and watch out at Green Tree. There was no indoor facility, and then after practice, we would talk to whoever we wanted to. We'd walk onto the field and it was awesome. And we'd talk to the coaches. And this is going way back. I'm not talking about Al Golden and all that, right? Going
Yes.
way back. And then other than that, Manny, if you remember, like I think it was Tuesdays.
Hmm.
Um, they had, well, at first they didn't even have that Schwartz Center or any of that stuff for
Right.
years. So we went in this little building at the Hecht, this little room in the Hecht, and they would just, the media room, they send in whoever you wanted. But there was a big room in the old offices that are now kind of attached to the new stuff, um, where every Tuesday they would just parade in. I mean, they would literally parade in all these players that you didn't, we could request guys, but everybody from the team would just kind of walk in. And it was where they had their team meetings. I don't know if it was the EJ room, it was called that or whatever at that time. And then all the reporters were there, and we would just go up to whoever we
Hmm.
wanted. And the reporters were very respectful. They were all the major papers were there. You know, obviously the Associated Press. It was mostly the local guys. There
Yeah.
weren't like .coms,
Yeah.
right? There weren't recruiting sites, and we just would pick. Okay, I'm going to talk to Clinton Portis now, and who I also liked, and because he always said what he didn't
Yeah.
care what he said. It was great. Uh, or I love, by the way, I know I'm getting off here, but the offensive line, the 2001 offensive line, Joaquin Gonzalez, Brett Romberg, oh my God. I mean, Shirko, Haji Razuli, whoever the hell, Martin Bibla, and like whoever, they were so good. Oh my God, they were so good. They would tell us everything. We would
Hmm.
just go and talk to who we wanted, and they weren't scared. They weren't paranoid of us. The players
Yeah.
weren't. I don't think anybody told them. Well, obviously they paraded them in. We could ask them what we wanted one on one. Wasn't
Yeah.
like people standing over us because they were scared we were going to ask something, whatever. Um, Too private. They told us everything, right?
Yeah.
They gave us, and it was so fun. We could do great stories. Locker room. Well, I don't think. Was the locker room open in games when you started covering?
Yes, yes. I
Locker
still
room
I
was
went in
open.
I would go into the locker rooms in the Orange Bowl and interview guys and that
Locker,
didn't end I think Paul D finally ended that, right? At like
well,
2006 or
Butch did.
7, somewhere around there.
Oh, was it that late? Okay, well, anyway, yeah, locker rooms after the game was okay. It's just that you see the guys exactly their emotional state. You
Yeah,
really see how they are, and you get stuff like that. But that's that. It's just that everything was open. There was no paranoia. There were no Zooms.
right.
Okay, how can you like? I got all the parents. They weren't scared to give me the parents, the brothers, sisters numbers.
Hmm.
They didn't have to ask permission.
Yeah.
There was no, even Randy Shannon, who was like, "You're not allowed." Remember, he got us
Yeah.
for, remember the famous lunch?
Yes,
And he
yes.
got us to, okay, and said, gave us the rules. We weren't allowed to
Yeah.
call parents. And I said, with all due
Eh,
respect, Brandy, I don't need permission to call a 45, 50-year-old parent. Sorry.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
they want to talk to me, I'm going to talk to them. But it just started getting worse and worse. So, but
Yeah.
that's how I could write those great stories.
Yeah. Yeah. You needed the access. We had a lot, we used to be able to have a lot of fun. I want to transition a little bit to just now your life after football, right? After covering for so long, your grandchildren and your
Huh.
traveling and everything else that you get to do now. You had so many fans and readers that loved you and said so many nice things to you after you announced your retirement. But I'm sure that, I kind of want people to know what you're up to these days.
These days I wake up in the morning and I look at my husband Kevin and I'm like, wow, I don't feel any stress. I don't feel stress. Wow, I'm on vacation, right? Am I on vacation or am I retired or whatever? It's pretty awesome. I never sleep late anyway, but if I want to, like we took this weekend, of course, the game weekend, just
Hmm.
like usual. I couldn't sleep. I went to bed at 3 a.m. The game night, even though the game was 3:30, woke up at like 6. That's just what happens. But today it was like 7. Oh, I'll sleep till 7:30. And then I sat and looked at my phone till 8:50. It's great. I mean, the lack of stress is so wonderful.
Hmm.
And then I can I can go to the arboretum and walk. I can read some books. I can like scour the new. I can really read the newspapers. Whatever papers. I can take my time. Um, and and the Miami Herald, like I said, is I can, when I want to. I'm still keeping up with things. I can write for them. Um, uh, they would let me go to any game I can and cover, but there's so many games I'll be away now, even home games. Like I'm going tomorrow to Portland to see my daughters. I have two daughters in Portland, the two older daughters, Portland, Oregon, and then my son Bernie, they're all major fans, all of them. Okay. And you know that,
Why would they be, Susan? Is it
yeah,
because they went with you to practice all the time
yeah,
and around the Canes and then went to school there?
yeah. Well, they all have some kind of touch with Miami. They all went to two of them went to Miami Medical School, Miller School of Medicine. Bernie went to undergrad. He refused to go anywhere else, and Miller School of Medicine. So, and my other daughter went to my University of Miami Law School. So UM has touched them, excuse me, in their lives. And my oldest, Meredith, um, went to Florida because it helped us as far as money goes. Very bright. They're all very bright. And she had all the scholarships and stuff, so we didn't really have to pay for it. And it's a great school. Florida's a great school. But I know for a fact that she wore her shirts, the Gators games. She was in the Tim Tebow era, and she was watching that game the other night, saying, "Wow, wow, they're great," or "Wow, this is fun." Or she was sending me messages. So, and that's my so-called Gator. Anyway, what else am I doing? A lot of traveling, um, and Also, I'm doing some work for some other entities a little bit on the side,
Mhm.
to keep to keep
Can't
busy.
stay away, Susan. You
It's
can't stay
hard,
away.
right, Manny? I mean,
Yeah.
it's fun to write,
Uh-huh.
and it's fun not to have stress. Um, I can do whatever the hell I want, and I have the time now. If I want to do something else, if I want to whatever, I'm going to do it. But this is what we work, Manny. You'll
Hmm.
know whenever the time comes. This is what you work your ass off for 40 years.
Hmm.
Um, and like I work 7 days a week, and now
Hmm.
and with the recruiting stuff and the NIL and the portal, transfer portal, it just
No
became
off days. No off days.
no off days and no off hours.
Hmm.
It was just 24/7, and it was like, okay, this is enough. However many years I have left, I want to be calm and enjoy my family, enjoy everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
it
it's
was
really
time.
good.
It was time. I'm glad you were able
And
to go out on your terms too. That's important,
yeah, I
when
agree.
you were
And
ready.
Jordan will be do a great job for the Miami Herald, and it's just that nobody has like the access or the ability to do. It's all the same stuff now.
Yeah. It
Right?
it
Look
is it
around.
is it is it
It's
is
the same.
challenging, Susan. It is challenging
You
and
can do a little more at the Athletic, um, and I know you're doing a lot of national stuff, and covering all different teams. But the people that cover Miami, I mean, it'll be great when they're doing well. It is true. The nation loves when Miami does well, whether they hate Miami, and a lot of people hate Miami or not. It
hmm
becomes more fun. And when people are winning, okay, remember this, everyone. When the teams are winning, everybody's happy.
Yep.
Okay, everybody's happy. You're going to get
Mario
a.
was happy to see you on Saturday. He came in, he was joy. He gave us all kinds of injury news that he normally doesn't. I mean, it was a different Mario. He
I
looked,
know. He told me Ryan Rodriguez. I asked him. I had to ask this after my first question. How's Ryan Rodriguez? He said, "Oh, he has a sprained ankle." Have you ever heard him say someone has a sprained ankle?
no, no.
That was pretty funny. But
Yeah.
yeah, asked me if I was unretired.
hmm It
I
was it
mean,
was a fun exchange. I wish I could play the whole thing for everybody here. I don't know that anybody got all the audio, but he was definitely taken aback to see you sitting in front of him for the first game.
yeah,
He thought you had retired, but Mario got news for you. She's still around, buddy. She's still around.
right. So be careful.
Yeah. Hey, Susan, it was fun to have you come on the show, and like I said, now that you're a freelancer for the Herald, they can't ban you from coming on my show anymore.
No, I don't
So.
think they banned me. They didn't
Well,
ban
listen,
me.
Andre Fernandez is one of my best friends. I
Right?
and obviously covered high schools for a long time. I wanted to bring him on my show and I couldn't because Alex didn't
Really?
want. Yes,
I didn't know that.
this was a few years ago. Yes, when I first launched the podcast, so I was told no, because we're competition. So whatever that means anymore.
Uh-oh.
But
Maybe I'll be barred from doing freelance stuff now.
I got
I
you in trouble. I got you in trouble.
No, I don't think so. And by the way, JD, our editor, John Devine, sports editor, I think he would disagree with you on the three big teams in
Oh
Florida.
yeah, he would say UCF, and maybe UCF's the one that finally ends the Napier era in a couple of weeks. By the way.
Actually, we talked about that. We were on the phone last night, and he
Yeah.
said that's exactly what he said. I think it's 2 games from now.
4 games. It's the fifth game of the season for
Oh, it's
Florida.
a fifth game. Okay, so yeah, that would be it.
Hmm.
KJ Jefferson.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
our buddy Nkosi Perry and Nigel Lee Kelly and all the and Ice Harris, Tim Harris Jr., who's the offensive coordinator over there. So we'll see. We'll see what happens for the Gators and in the future. But this Canes team, Susan, to end it on a Canes note, we both were very, very impressed, and I think it's going to be a fun season. You'll be enjoying it from afar for the most part. Hey, look, she threw the U up for you guys.
get the Gator chomp. Yeah, my daughter might have gone to Florida, and I love that school, awesome experience. But the Gators,
Yeah,
I don't know.
not for you, not for you. You were with
Yeah, no,
Mario there with the breaking of the
of
jaw.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, you always want the team you're covering to win and the team you've gotten to know for 20 something years, right? I mean, only because it makes it more fun to cover. It makes it easier. People are nicer.
I can totally speak to that, Susan. I can speak to that too. Ever since I've gotten on the beat, they've been pretty bad. So it is what it is.
Anyway,
Anyway, thanks for
thank
coming on
you.
the show. It was
Thank
fun.
you.
All right.